Chapter 19 The Dream-Eyed Monster. Early on a Saturday morning, Sophie found herself immersed in her work. She had been strategizing and crunching numbers until 4 a.m. Her exhaustion finally forcing her to sleep on Lee's couch. Her latest update from the investors wasn't good. The investment money was delayed. She knew she could only postpone action for another 2 to 4 weeks before she had to implement her 3-point strategy. She had discussed this plan meticulously with Jerry, her brand partner, and they both agreed it was the way forward. Jerry had assured her he would have everything mapped out in 2 weeks, but they could start buying lights, audio equipment, live stream, and lead generation systems immediately. As she delved deeper into her work, her mind buzzing with thoughts, Lee finally stirred from his slumber. He greeted her with affection, but soon turned his attention to more pressing matters, coffee and food. Sophie tried to be happy in these moments, but she couldn't help but sense that Lee had made a decision to break things off with her. She had spoken to Jimmy and knew exactly what was happening. The signs were predictable, yet Sophie pushed down this vision. She busied herself in the kitchen, preparing bagels, avocado, eggs, and baked avocado. It felt like a cozy family morning with Lee, but in her heart, Sophie knew this might be the last time they shared such moments. The damage had been done by Jimmy, and Sophie had tried to be truthful, but her history had come back to haunt her. She felt as if she had been dragged through the fires of truth. However, she also understood that the Sophie they were talking about was not the person she was now. People engaged in self-discovery and personal growth changed daily. After a leisurely breakfast, Sophie made her way to the office, kissed Lee goodbye, and left with a heavy heart. Positivity was what Sophie needed, so she headed to the office, where she enjoyed the light lunch of bread and fruit, along with coffee and green tea with Jerry. Sophie was waiting for a message from Max. Sophie and Max had been collaborating on a project development for a device, and Max had asked Sophie for a trip to the airport, pick up the sample product, and back to the city. It was a 3-hour round journey, and Sophie wasn't looking forward to ignoring the tapping noise in her car for 3 hours. Saturday was her day to escape from the world, but the reality was that she had numerous proposals to complete. Contracts meant investment, and Sophie had her eye on her plans for growth and needed brain downtime. By 8 p.m., Sophie had left her office and was heading to her nephew Max for dinner and await the coordinates to pick up the sample. It wasn't until 7 a.m. the following day that Sophie returned home, having spent hours discussing new samples with Max and enjoying family time with her favorite nephew. Sophie believed Max had a great concept. She called Lee to share her day, but his response was far from cheerful. He explained that Jimmy had said nothing to him. It was his own decision to break up with her. He told Sophie, "Sorry, you're not good enough for me," and then abruptly ended the call. Sophie responded with grace and gratitude. "Thank you for your time. It was my pleasure," she said. "I hope you find what you're looking for." As Sophie hung up the phone, a bittersweet smile tugged at the corners of her lips, and memories of a poignant conversation with Lee resurfaced, intertwined with avocados and symbolism. Sophie had handed Lee 2 avocado seeds with toothpicks in and suggested, "Pop these seeds into water and wait for the roots." Lee, perhaps displaying a hint of impatience, had remarked, "Growing takes so long." Sophie, ever the sage, replied with a saying that had guided her through many chapters of life. "The best time to plant a seed was 15 years ago when you were still young. The second best time is right now." The conversation about avocados had a profound undercurrent, serving as a metaphor for their relationship. It reminded Sophie of a time when she had grown avocado trees with her son, a memory she held dear. However, the mention of these trees had brought forth a tinge of sadness. She shared with Lee. They'd grown strong in just 3 years. Lee's response to her story had been laden with negativity, as he asked, "Where are these trees now?" Sophie's expression shifted briefly to one of melancholy, and she replied softly, "Pulled up and thrown away to die, which is what happened to my first marriage at the same time." It was a conversation that had lingered in her thoughts, a poignant reminder of the fragility of growth and the impermanence of certain relationships. As she contemplated these memories, Sophie couldn't help but acknowledge the ebb and flow of life's experiences, both bitter and sweet. She wondered if he would ever grow to avocado trees. "Hope he does," she thought. "I like avocados." Now single again, Sophie shifted her focus to her career. She was determined to achieve fame with AI live streams and become a TV host for innovative products. Data held the key to success, and Sophie was determined to maximize her B2B sales with the help of AI tools. In the absence of a romantic relationship, Sophie decided to treat herself to lunch at Dreamer's Bar. She had a meeting with a video producer to discuss a branding consultation for the Shenwan pineapple. Sophie provided suggestions to the film crew through translation earpods. They agreed to create 2 videos, one featuring the brand icon Bobo the Shenwan pineapple, and another that showcased a walkthrough of her factory. Sophie's good friend Frederick joined the meeting, and they discussed the old times when they had launched his brand in Latin America. The memories of Sophie and Frederick's adventure in digital and guerrilla marketing brought a smile to Sophie's face. Sophie said to Frederick, "Do you remember the time when your military friend in a disco at 2 a.m. in the morning threw a glass of rum and coke in my face because, and I quote, 'You discussed to me that you don't speak Spanish?' I wouldn't have minded," Sophie went on, "but I wanted to drink that rum and coke as it had been a long trip." Sophie also remembered the close calls, the times they had nearly been imprisoned. After a long day of work, Sophie finally returned home, exhausted. Sophie took a moment to reflect on Lee. She picked up her mobile and saw a message from Lee that read, "Good night." Glancing at the clock, it was 11:50. Sophie decided to give him a chance to see if he had the courage to answer a call. No answer. The digital clock switched to 12, signaling the end of the game. It was time for bed. "Good night yourself," she texted back. What Sophie had predicted while making avocados had come to pass. She wondered if Lee would ever plant those avocado trees. As she lay in bed, single once more, she thought about the path ahead. Sophie was determined to forge ahead, focusing on her career and unburdened by the complexities of a relationship that had run its course. Sophie woke up early, determined to shake off the lingering effects of the previous day's drama and focus on the present moment. Sleep had eluded her, her dreams filled with images of magical futures with Lee. Determined to shift her perspective, Sophie dressed herself with a flair that mirrored a movie star. Externally, she radiated confidence, but internally, she couldn't shake the dreams. She understood that Lee had made his choice. Sophie could only accept it. She had experienced similar situations in past relationships. Carol arrived at the studio early, and they engaged in a discussion covering various topics. Once they had completed their work, Sophie left the studio to meet her German friend Stella. Stella had called for Sophie's help with a complex problem, and Sophie knew just what was needed. They agreed to meet in person to discuss the details. After finalizing the consulting session with Stella, Sophie extended an invitation to her old friend Fredia for a meeting to discuss business over lunch. During the meal, Sophie found herself pressed for time to go into detail. She excused herself, promising to schedule more in-depth meetings, as she had a prior commitment to support her nephew Max. Max was embarking on her own entrepreneurial journey and had another appearance scheduled on the local TV station. Sophie joined the video shoot not only to support Max, but also to garner more TV attention for her own show, already pitched to local leaders. At the same time, Sophie was actively pursuing a meeting with these leaders for the upcoming week at her factory. In the midst of her busy day, filled with video shoots and back-to-back meetings, Sophie couldn't help but wonder about Lee. She tried to imagine what he might be thinking. While Lee's decision had seemingly been based on practical considerations, Sophie knew that Jimmy had likely expanded upon negative details in conversations with him. As the day progressed, Sophie sought moments of respite, retreating to her quiet sanctuary for a few hours to rest her mind. She understood that she had no immediate decisions to make regarding Lee. Things would unfold naturally. Her primary focus was on making her project successful. Sophie knew that once she achieved her goals and stacked up her accomplishments on paper, her options for finding the right person would increase exponentially. In the quiet of her retreat, Sophie whispered to herself, "Grow those avocados, Lee." It was a reminder that life was ever evolving, and opportunities often presented themselves when one least expected them. Sophie's determination to create her own success remained unwavering, and she believed that, in time, the right person would recognize the true value she brought to the table. Sophie couldn't help but reflect on the recent messages from Lee. His words about the avocado seed sparked a sense of nostalgia and irony in her heart. It was as if the universe was trying to send them a message of growth, change, and the uncertain nature of promises. In her quiet retreat, Sophie whispered to herself once more, "Grow those avocados, Lee." After her family dinner, Sophie decided to bring a meal to Lee's studio, an opportunity for closure over breakfast. Sophie carefully prepared a sandwich, selecting the best bread in the city, an assortment of imported cold meats, slices of cheddar, Stilton blue cheese, cream cheese, and even a can of beer. As she left the sandwich by the door, she couldn't help but smile at the thought of their old times, their conversations, and the way things used to be balanced between them. Lee, though in need of time alone, seemed to appreciate the gesture, and they talked on the phone for a while as if they were old friends. Sophie then headed for her office, planning to follow up on her computer. However, the trusted car had other plans. Right in the middle of a dark, bustling three-lane expressway, it decided to act up, with the gear slipping. That knocking noise she had previously been ignoring had become a full-blown problem. Sophie took a deep breath and, with a level head, took some photos of the car's predicament. She reached out to her network in the city, people who knew how to handle such situations. Within 20 minutes, her car was on its way to the repair shop, and she was in a taxi heading to her nephew Max's house for a family dinner. The evening with her family recharged her spirit. Rudy, her nephew, had prepared delicious food, and as they all gathered around the table, Sophie said a silent prayer of gratitude to the universe for good food and the company of her loved ones. The mood gradually lightened, and Sophie knew it was time for her to leave. She hugged Max and the rest of the family and headed back to her cave of solitude. During dinner, Sophie had received a message from Lee. Now back in her thinking cave, she reviewed the messages, focusing on one in particular. Lee had written, "Please kindly note that the avocado seed was put into the water this morning. I'm not sure if I can grow it, but I believe Sophie can keep her promise." It struck Sophie as an enigmatic message, as if Lee's K didn't quite match hers in this time and space. Sophie contemplated the message, its enigmatic essence echoing her thoughts. She understood that in the vast tapestry of the universe, infinite possibilities and parallel realities coexisted, each with its unique story. Perhaps, in another dimension, at a different juncture in time, their narrative might have unfolded differently. Sophie had come to accept the universe's mysterious and capricious nature. As for the humble avocado seed, its destiny remained an enigma, waiting to unfurl in its own time. Sophie knew that only time would reveal whether it would sprout and thrive, a symbol of potential and new beginnings. With a wistful smile, Sophie acknowledged the one undeniable truth: she possessed the skill to craft a delicious avocado sandwich. She hoped that the breakfast she had prepared for Lee brought a semblance of closure to their intricate journey. Later that day, a photo from Lee appeared on her screen, an avocado and egg sandwich, expertly crafted. Sophie gazed at the image for what felt like an eternity, seeing in it not just a delectable meal, but a reflection of their shared potential journeys, encapsulated within the layers of a sandwich. Life, like the flight of swans, had its rhythms, a natural ebb and flow. Just as swans must travel both south and north, Sophie recognized that life's journey was a continuous learning process. In the words of Douglas Adams, there was indeed a knack to flying, a wisdom in choosing the right moment to take the leap. Choose a sunny day when you jump. Sophie embraced the uncertainty of the future with the same resilience and determination that had carried her this far. In the ever-expanding narrative of her life, she knew that each chapter held the promise of growth, transformation, and the unexpected. Armed with her trusty avocado sandwich in the bag of dreams, she ventured forth, fueled by the wisdom of her dreams and the courage of her heart, ready to take on whatever quirky challenges the universe decided to throw her way.
Just a reminder, this is a work of fiction. While the author may have drawn inspiration from various sources, any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or actual events is entirely coincidentally improbable if a factor of 2 to the power of 276,709 to 1 against and suggest filing legal complaints to Marvin at the Complaints Department of the Sirius Cybernetics Corporation. Disclaimer: according to the Hitchhiker's Guide, Marvin is smart. He's also very annoying. He knows both of these things, and they bother him, but he cannot change either one. Marvin is the coworker you avoid until you absolutely need help with something.